Mother-in-law surprised couple by throwing away wife's priceless inheritance while they were on vacation. What happened next tore a family apart. Before we begin, tell us in the comments from which city are you watching? And at the end, do not forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the driveway of the small colonial house in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, as Marcus Chen pulled their Honda Odyssey to a stop. It was 4:47 p.m. on a Tuesday in late September, and the maple trees lining the street had just begun their transformation into autumn gold. In the passenger seat, his wife Paula sat with her eyes closed, a small smile playing at her lips. The first real smile he'd seen in 14 months. Their twin daughters, Emma and Sophie, 14 months old, were finally, blessedly, asleep in their car seats. 5 days. They'd only been gone 5 days. 5 days in a cabin in the Poconos with no cell service, no crying babies at 3 a.m., no endless diaper changes. 5 days of remembering what it felt like to be Marcus and Paula instead of just mom and dad. Marcus looked at his wife, really looked at her. Paula Chen, formerly Paula Yoshida, 29 years old with honey blonde hair from her American mother and delicate features from her Japanese father. Dark circles under her eyes from months of sleep deprivation. But today those eyes held something he hadn't seen since before the twins were born. Peace. They'd given Paula's mother the spare key before leaving, just in case. To water the plants, to check the mail. Hakiko had insisted, actually, going on about emergencies and broken pipes and what-ifs until exhaustion won, and Paula handed over the key with clear instructions. Just the plants. Just the mail. Nothing more. Paula opened her eyes and turned to look at the house. Marcus watched something flicker across her face. Something uncertain. She whispered that something felt wrong. Marcus followed her gaze. The house looked normal. Red brick. Black shutters. But there was something in the way the afternoon light hit the windows. Something off that he couldn't quite place. They unbuckled the twins carefully, trying not to wake them. Paula's keys jingled as she unlocked the door. The sound echoed wrong somehow, but Marcus pushed the thought away. The door swung open, and everything stopped. Before we go further, you need to understand something about Paula Chen. You need to understand why what she was about to discover would break her in a way that nothing else ever could. When Paula was 7 years old, her parents, both brilliant, ambitious academics, accepted prestigious positions at universities on opposite coasts. Her father went to Berkeley, her mother to Columbia, and Paula went to live with her grandmother Miriam in Philadelphia. Just for a year, they promised. Just until we get settled. 1 year became 2. 2 became 5. By the time Paula was 12, she'd stopped asking when she could come home because she'd realized something profound. She was already home. Grandma Miriam's small house in Society Hill, with its creaking floors and the garden full of cardinals, was more home than anywhere else had ever been. Miriam Yoshida had lived a life carved from hardship. Her husband, Paula's grandfather, died in Korea in 1952, 3 months before their first daughter was born. Miriam raised 3 daughters alone, working as a seamstress, taking in mending and alterations to make ends meet. The year Paula came to live with her, Miriam was 68 years old. Every morning she'd sit at her hand-carved mahogany desk with her tea, writing in her journal. She'd let Paula sit at the matching vanity, brushing her hair in the same mirror Miriam had used for 60 years. Miriam had told Paula the story many times. Her father, Paula's great-grandfather, had been a carpenter who came from Kyoto. He'd carved these 2 pieces for Miriam's wedding in 1952, pouring months of work into every detail. The desk had cherry blossoms carved into the legs, delicate and precise, to remind Miriam of a homeland she'd never seen. The vanity had birds carved into the frame. Cardinals. 7 of them. Paula had asked why 7 when Miriam only had 3 daughters. Miriam had smiled and explained that she'd told her father she wanted 7 children. He'd laughed and said 3 was enough, but he'd carved 7 birds anyway, for dreams that didn't come true but still mattered, for hope that persisted even when reality fell short. When Miriam developed dementia at 89, she forgot her daughters' names. She forgot she had daughters at all. Some days at the care facility, she'd look at Paula with confusion and ask if they knew each other. Paula would sit there, holding her grandmother's hand, explaining she was her granddaughter, the one who lived with her, and Miriam would nod politely like Paula was a kind stranger telling an interesting story. During those final 2 years, Paula would go home to Brooklyn and sit at Miriam's desk, the desk Miriam had left to her in a living trust, and write letters. Letters Miriam would never read. Letters that said all the things Paula needed to say to the only person who'd ever made her feel truly, unconditionally wanted. "Dear Grandma," Emma said Mama today, "you would have loved her. Dear Grandma, I got promoted. You always said I was smart. Dear Grandma, I miss you so much I can't breathe sometimes." When Miriam died 3 years ago, she left Paula only 2 things, the desk and the vanity. Her daughters, Paula's mother and aunts, got everything else, the house, the savings, the jewelry. Paula didn't care. She had what mattered. She had the furniture where her great-grandfather's hands had carved love into mahogany in 1952. She had the desk where Miriam had written her dreams. She had the vanity where 7 cardinals reminded her that loving 7 children when you only had 3 wasn't foolish. It was hopeful. Every morning for 3 years, Paula had sat at that vanity, brushed her hair, counted the 7 cardinals, and felt connected to something bigger than herself. Until today. The afternoon light was streaming through the west window at the wrong angle, hitting surfaces that shouldn't exist. The living room was different. Marcus's brain processed it in slow motion, where Miriam's desk had sat for 3 years, positioned precisely to catch the morning light, where Paula would sit every single morning with her coffee and her journal. There was furniture, but not the right furniture, a particle board desk, flat pack, modern, cheap. The price tag was still attached, $89.99. Paula made a sound, not a word, just a sound, like air being forced from lungs that had forgotten how to breathe. Marcus's eyes tracked to where the vanity should be. Gone. In its place stood an IKEA dresser. White, generic. One of the drawers was crooked, not fully closed, like someone had assembled it in a hurry without reading the instructions properly. Paula stood frozen in the doorway, Sophie in her arms, staring at the space where her grandmother's furniture had been for 3 years, where 70 years of family history should have been standing. The kitchen door swung open, and Hakiko appeared, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She was beaming, actually beaming like she'd just accomplished something extraordinary. She announced it was a surprise, gesturing around the room like a game show hostess, revealing a grand prize. She explained she'd been so busy, knew Paula was overwhelmed with the twins, and thought the room looked so dark and dated with all that old wood making everything gloomy. So she'd given them a makeover, modern, bright, fresh. Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest as Paula asked, in a voice he'd never heard her use before, where her desk was. Hakiko explained cheerfully that she'd donated it. And that dusty old vanity, too. There was a wonderful charity that picked up furniture, she said, and they were thrilled to get quality antiques. They could sell them and use the money to help families in need. Wasn't that wonderful? She'd even bought all the new furniture herself. The desk was only $90 and it had a USB port built right in. So practical. Paula's voice went flat and empty as she asked where the furniture was now. Hakiko repeated that she'd donated it. To the charity. They'd picked it up Friday morning. Her smile faltered as she asked why Paula was upset. She'd thought Paula would be happy. Marcus watched his wife's face cycle through emotions faster than he could track them. Shock. Disbelief. A flash of desperate hope that maybe this was somehow a misunderstanding. Then the terrible dawning of comprehension. Then something that terrified him. Paula's face went completely blank. She stated, in a voice devoid of all emotion, that her mother had thrown away her grandmother's furniture. Hakiko's face crumpled as she insisted she hadn't thrown it away. She'd donated it for a good cause. She'd spent 3 days organizing the room. She'd used her vacation time. She'd spent her own money. Why was Paula being like this? Paula told her mother to get out. The words were so quiet, Marcus almost didn't hear them. What happened next unfolded like a nightmare in slow motion. Hakiko tried to dismiss it as travel exhaustion, suggesting Paula wasn't thinking clearly. But Paula's response was measured and deliberate. She walked toward her mother with controlled, precise steps, each one somehow more frightening than if she'd been screaming. Paula laid it out with devastating clarity. Her mother had entered their home, looked at furniture her great-grandfather had carved with his own hands, the desk where her grandmother had sat every morning for 60 years, the vanity where Paula had brushed her hair every morning since Miriam died, and Hakiko had decided it was junk and thrown it out. Hakiko tried to protest that it wasn't junk, it was valuable. That's why the charity wanted it. Paula was being unreasonable, but Paula pressed forward. Had Hakiko even looked at it? Had she seen the cherry blossoms carved into the legs? Had she counted the 7 cardinals? Had she noticed that the drawer on the vanity stuck just a little bit, and you had to lift it while you pulled? Hakiko stammered, clearly not understanding where this was going. Paula's voice cracked as she revealed the truth. That's where Grandma kept the letters. The letters Grandpa wrote from Korea, in a false bottom, in the stuck drawer. The drawer Paula had never fixed because Grandma had shown her where the letters were the day before dementia stole her mind completely. Marcus saw the exact moment Hakiko realized the magnitude of what she'd done. The color drained from her face as she whispered about not knowing there were letters. Paula's scream cut through the house like a knife. She hadn't asked, hadn't texted, hadn't called, hadn't thought for even a second that maybe she should check before throwing away someone's inheritance. She'd just decided that what mattered to Paula was junk, that her grandmother's memory was dated, that 70 years of family history was gloomy. The twins started crying. Emma first, then Sophie, their wails filling the space between the 3 adults. Hakiko was crying too now, insisting she was trying to help, trying to do something nice, gesturing desperately at the cheap replacement furniture, as if it could somehow make this right. Marcus's voice cut through the chaos. He demanded the key. Now! Hakiko looked between them, shocked, asking if he was seriously taking Paula's side. Marcus corrected her. There were no sides. She'd thrown away his wife's grandmother's furniture. Furniture that couldn't be replaced. Furniture that had irreplaceable letters hidden in it. She needed to leave. Hakiko fumbled in her purse, pulled out the key ring, and for a moment Marcus thought she was going to hand it over with some semblance of dignity. Instead, she threw it. It hit Marcus in the chest and clattered to the floor. She launched into a tirade about spending 3 days making their home beautiful, using her vacation time, spending her own money, and this was the thanks she got. She was being treated like she'd committed a crime. Paula's response was barely audible, but somehow more devastating than any scream. She stated simply that her mother had thrown away the last pieces of her grandmother she had. Hakiko's voice went shrill. They were just things, she insisted. Just old furniture. She was Paula's mother. She was alive. She was there. And Paula was choosing dead wood over her own mother. Paula pointed to the door and told her to get out. Hakiko grabbed her purse and headed for the exit. She turned back one final time, tears streaming, and predicted they'd regret this. Both of them. When they calmed down, they'd feel terrible about how they'd treated her. She slammed the door so hard that the wreath, Miriam's wreath, the one she'd made from grapevines in her garden, fell off and shattered on the porch. For 10 seconds, nobody moved. Emma and Sophie were both wailing. Marcus stood there holding them, one in each arm, his shoulders screaming from the weight. Paula walked slowly to where the desk used to be. She stood in the empty space, staring at the particle board replacement with its practical USB port, at the IKEA dresser, where 70 years of family history should have been standing. Then she slid down the wall and broke. Marcus had heard his wife cry before, after difficult births, during stressful nights with the twins. The day she got the call that Miriam had died, this was different. This was the sound of something fundamental shattering. She sobbed without making noise at first, her body convulsing, her hands pressed against her face. Then the sounds came, raw, animal sounds of grief that made Marcus's chest ache. She rocked back and forth in the space where her grandmother's desk had been for 3 years. Marcus put the twins in their playpen. They were still crying but safe, and went to his wife. He didn't say anything. Didn't tell her it would be okay. Didn't promise they'd find the furniture. Didn't say her mother meant well. He just sat next to her on the floor and held her while she fell apart. The afternoon light shifted. The shadows grew longer. And Paula cried in the space where her history used to be. At 7:42 p.m., after Paula had finally cried herself out and was lying on the couch in numb silence, Marcus made the first call. The charity was called Second Chance Furniture. He'd found their number on a receipt Hakiko had thoughtfully left on the counter, probably expecting praise for her documentation. The conversation that followed crushed whatever small hope Marcus had been carrying. Yes, they remembered the pieces. Beautiful furniture, hand-carved, probably from the 50s. They'd been thrilled to get them, best donation they'd had in months. No, they didn't still have them, sold the same day. A dealer had come in, taken one look, offered cash immediately. Marcus asked desperately for contact information for the buyer. The answer came back flat. Privacy policy. They didn't give out buyer information. Marcus tried to explain that this wasn't a legal donation. His mother-in-law didn't have permission. But the response was clear. Had she stolen them? No. Then legally, she could donate them. She'd signed the form confirming ownership. There was nothing they could do. Marcus pleaded. His wife's grandmother had made those pieces. They were irreplaceable. Family heirlooms. The sympathy in the voice on the other end was genuine but useless. He was sorry. He wished he could help. But they were gone. The line went dead. Marcus stood in his kitchen, phone still pressed to his ear, and felt rage build in his chest like nothing he'd ever experienced. Gone. 70 years of family history, sold to an anonymous dealer for cash. Gone. Marcus called the emergency locksmith at 8:15 p.m., $200 for the emergency fee plus $60 per lock, 3 exterior doors. Change them all. While they waited, Marcus tried to explain to Emma and Sophie why Mommy was sad, why Oba-chan wasn't visiting, why everything felt wrong. Emma patted Paula's face and asked if Oba-chan could make Mama happy. Marcus felt his jaw clench as he said, "Not right now, sweetie." The locksmith arrived at 9:03 p.m., a guy named Ray who took one look at Paula's tear-stained face and said it looked like a bad day. Marcus confirmed it was the worst. Ray worked in professional silence, changed all 3 locks in 40 minutes, and handed over 3 new sets of keys. As he left, he said he hoped things got better. Marcus closed and locked the door with the new key. It felt like drawing a line in the sand, like planting a flag, this far and no further. His phone buzzed. Paula's brother James wanted to know what the hell had happened. Their mother had called him crying. Marcus explained everything, the furniture, the letters, the false bottom drawer, the charity sale. James's reaction came through the phone in waves of disbelief. She threw away Grandma Miriam's furniture, the desk with the cherry blossoms. Oh my God. Marcus looked at his wife sitting on the couch with the twins, staring at nothing, and told James that no, Paula was not okay. She was really, really not okay. James asked what they needed. Marcus's request was simple and absolute. Tell your mother she's not welcome here anymore. Not until Paula decides otherwise. And that includes seeing the twins. The silence stretched for 5 seconds before James agreed. It was a big deal, he acknowledged. Their mother was going to lose her mind. But Marcus was right. There was no excuse for what she'd done. James promised to tell her and confirmed he was on their side. Marcus ended the call and checked the time. 10:47 p.m. His phone was already lighting up with texts. The messages came in waves. Paula's Aunt Diane was first. All caps. How dare they keep those babies from their grandmother over furniture? Paula's cousin Michelle followed. This was insane. Hakiko was devastated. She'd tried to do something nice and they were punishing her. They should be grateful. Paula's father Robert texted from Tokyo. Perhaps everyone needed to calm down and speak rationally. Then came Paula's older sister Karen. The message was longer, more calculated. She couldn't believe they were doing this to their mother. She'd made one mistake and they were being controlling, honestly, kind of abusive. They were isolating Paula from her family. Did they realize how this looked? That word. Abusive. Marcus showed the text to Paula. She read it 3 times, picked up her phone, and typed a response. She threw away Grandma Miriam's desk. The one great-grandpa made, the vanity with the 7 cardinals. The letters from Grandpa were inside, all gone. "And you think I'm being abusive?" The response came 30 seconds later. It was furniture. Paula. She didn't kill someone. She was trying to help. Paula needed therapy if she was going to throw away her relationship with their mother over things. Paula put her phone face down on the coffee table and whispered that they didn't get it. They were never going to get it. Marcus reminded her that James got it. One person, Paula said, out of her entire family. By midnight, Marcus had 17 missed calls, 28 text messages, and 4 people had shown up at the door. He didn't answer any of them. The doorbell rang again at 12:47 a.m. Marcus yanked the door open, ready to unleash everything he'd been holding back. James stood there, hands raised, asking if he could come in. James sat at their kitchen table while Marcus made coffee. Paula stayed on the couch with the twins, who'd finally fallen asleep against her. James explained that their mother was at his place. She was crying, but also angry. She kept saying she didn't understand why they were being so dramatic. Marcus asked if he'd told her about the letters. James confirmed he had. Hakiko's response had been to ask how she was supposed to know there were letters. James had pointed out that maybe she should have asked before throwing away someone's inheritance. Hakiko had accused him of ganging up on her. Marcus mentioned that the rest of the family thought they were overreacting. James's response was immediate. The rest of the family didn't live with Grandma Miriam. They didn't understand what those pieces meant to Paula. He did. He'd spent summers there. He remembered Grandma showing them the carvings, explaining what each flower meant. Marcus asked if James could help them find the furniture. James looked confused. Find them? Marcus laid it out. The charity sold them to a dealer. He was thinking they'd hire a private investigator, track down antique dealers in the tri-state area, offer rewards, something, anything. James acknowledged it could cost thousands. Marcus's response was immediate. He didn't care. James nodded slowly and said he knew someone. Former cop who now did recovery work. Expensive, but good. If the furniture could be found, he'd find it. Marcus asked him to call in the morning. They sat in silence for a moment before James asked quietly if their mother had really thrown the key at Marcus. Marcus confirmed she had, hit him in the chest. James closed his eyes and swore softly. Marcus mentioned that Emma had asked where Oba-chan was. Wanted to know if Oba-chan was dead like great-grandma Miriam. James asked how long Marcus was thinking. The ban. How long would it last? Marcus looked at his wife, curled on the couch, arms around their sleeping daughters, and said as long as it takes. 3 days later, at 2:37 p.m. on Friday, Hakiko posted on Facebook. Marcus saw it because his sister screenshot it and sent it with a message saying this was bad. The post was carefully crafted. Sometimes you try to do something loving for your children and get punished for it. She'd spent her vacation time and her own money making her daughter's home beautiful while they were away. She'd wanted to surprise them. Instead, she was being called names, banned from her grandchildren's lives, accused of terrible things. Family should forgive. Family should understand. But she was learning that some people value things more than people. Her heart was broken. Please pray for my family. Followed by a broken heart emoji. 427 likes. 193 comments. Most of them supporting Hakiko, calling her a good mother, saying some people were so ungrateful, complaining that this generation doesn't understand sacrifice. But there were others asking what she'd thrown away, whether she'd asked permission first, suggesting there seemed to be more to the story. Marcus showed Paula. She read it twice. Her hands shook. She whispered that her mother was making herself the victim. She'd thrown away irreplaceable family heirlooms, and she was making herself the victim. Marcus asked if Paula wanted to respond. Paula stared at the screen for a long moment. At her mother's carefully worded post that made it sound like she'd rearranged some furniture, not destroyed 70 years of family history. She said no, because nothing she said would make them understand. They'd think she was attacking her mother. They'd think she was cruel. Marcus took the phone from her hands and said the people who mattered knew the truth. James knew. His family knew. Her real friends knew. The rest of them could think whatever they wanted. On Monday, James's investigator friend called with news. Frank Romano, 62, former NYPD detective. Voice like gravel. No small talk. He'd tracked the furniture. Found the dealer who bought it. Martin Voss, operating out of Scarsdale, high-end antiques. Marcus's heart jumped. Could they get it back? That's where it got complicated, Frank explained. Voss had already sold the desk. Private collector named Richard Chen, no relation, lived on Manhattan's Upper East Side, worth about $12 million. The number hung in the air for a moment before Marcus asked what that meant. It meant Chen knew the desk was special. Voss had told him the backstory. Hand-carved 1952, Japanese carpenter. Chen had specifically collected it because of the craftsmanship. He'd paid $38,000 for it. Marcus's vision swam. 38,000. Frank confirmed the number and added that Voss said it was one of the finest examples of post-war Japanese-American woodworking he'd ever seen. Paula had gone very, very still on the couch. Marcus asked about the vanity, his voice barely steady. That was the good news, Frank said. Voss still had it. He'd been planning to restore it first. Asking price was $42,000, but Frank had explained the situation. Voss was willing to sell it back for what he'd paid the charity, $1,800. He was a decent guy. He felt bad. Marcus asked about the desk. Could they contact Richard Chen? Frank had already tried. Chen wasn't interested. Said he'd bought it legally, loved the piece, and while he sympathized, he wasn't selling. Paula stood up and walked out of the room. Marcus heard the bedroom door close. Marcus asked carefully if there was any legal action they could take. Against the mother-in-law, against the charity, against Chen. Frank's answer was definitive. Against Hakiko? No, she hadn't stolen it. Against the charity? No, they'd followed procedure. Against Chen? No, he'd bought it in good faith. There was no legal case. So half his wife's inheritance was just gone, Marcus said flatly. One piece was gone, Frank corrected, but they could get the vanity back. That was something. $1,800. Marcus could swing that. Their savings would take a hit, but they could do it. He told Frank to arrange the purchase. He'd have the money wired that day. Frank agreed and then added something carefully. About the desk. He'd keep digging. Sometimes collectors changed their minds. Sometimes they had financial troubles. Sometimes they died and estates liquidated. If an opportunity came up, he'd call. But Marcus shouldn't hold his breath. The vanity arrived on Thursday. Martin Voss delivered it personally in his pristine white van. He helped Marcus carry it inside, refused payment for the delivery, and before he left, he said something that would stay with Marcus forever. He'd been in this business 40 years, Voss explained, and he'd learned something important. The most valuable antiques aren't worth money, they're worth memory. Paula's grandmother's hands had touched this piece every day for 60 years. That wasn't something you could put a price on. When Voss left, Paula stood in front of the vanity for a full 5 minutes without touching it. Then she opened the stuck drawer, lifted it slightly as she pulled, the way Miriam had taught her 20 years ago. Empty. The letters were gone with the desk. Grandpa's words from Korea. Grandma's kept secrets. The physical proof that love had existed and endured. All gone. But Paula sat down anyway, picked up her brush, and in the mirror Marcus saw 7 carved cardinals looking back at her. She started to cry, but this time it was different. This time it wasn't the sound of breaking. It was the sound of grieving, of accepting, of beginning to heal around a wound that would never fully close. She whispered that she'd gotten half of her grandmother back, and half was more than nothing. Hakiko called the next day. Marcus answered. There was no greeting from her, no apology, just a statement that she'd heard they'd bought the vanity back. Marcus confirmed they had. For $1,800, she said. Yes, Marcus repeated. That's how much they'd spent to prove a point, she stated. Marcus took a breath and corrected her. That's how much they'd spent to get back one piece of Paula's inheritance that Hakiko had no right to give away. Hakiko tried to say she didn't know it was worth that much. Marcus cut her off. It wasn't about the money. It never was. Then what was it about? She asked. Marcus laid it out clearly. It was about her going into their home and making decisions that weren't hers to make. About looking at Paula's most precious possessions and deciding they were junk. About never once considering that maybe those pieces meant something. Hakiko insisted she was trying to help. No, Marcus said. She was trying to control. There was a difference. The silence stretched between them before Hakiko asked when she could see her granddaughters. That was Paula's decision, Marcus told her. Paula wouldn't answer her calls, Hakiko said. Then she had her answer. Marcus replied. Hakiko's voice went small, almost childlike. They were her grandchildren. And that desk was Paula's inheritance, Marcus countered. She hadn't cared about that. He heard her breath hitch on the other end of the line. She admitted quietly that she'd made a mistake. Yes, Marcus agreed, she had. How could she fix it, she asked. Marcus's answer was honest and brutal. He didn't know if she could. The desk was gone, Hakiko. Permanently. Owned by a collector who wouldn't sell. Paula had lost her great-grandfather's work. She'd lost her grandfather's letters. She'd lost the last tangible pieces of the grandmother who raised her. And Hakiko had done that. She couldn't fix it. So she'd never see Emma and Sophie again? Hakiko asked, her voice breaking. Marcus corrected her. He hadn't said that. But she needed to understand something important. Trust was earned. She'd violated theirs. If she wanted it back, she'd have to prove she understood why what she'd done was so devastating. And that started with a real apology. Not, I'm sorry you're upset. Not, I didn't mean to. A real apology that acknowledged what she'd destroyed. Another long silence passed before Hakiko asked if Marcus would tell Paula she'd called. He said he would. And that she finally understood, Hakiko added. Do you? Marcus asked. She thought so, she said quietly. Then yes, Marcus confirmed. He'd tell Paula. 3 weeks later, Paula sat at the vanity, back in its proper place by the window where it belonged, and brushed her hair. Emma and Sophie played at her feet, stacking blocks and babbling in their twin language that only they understood. Marcus watched from the doorway. Paula mentioned she was thinking about writing to Richard Chen, the collector who owned the desk, not to ask for it back, just to tell him about her great-grandfather, about Grandma Miriam, so he knew the whole story. Marcus said that was a good idea. Maybe someday he'd want to pass it on, Paula mused. Maybe there was a universe where she'd get it back. Maybe, Marcus agreed. She met his eyes in the mirror and thanked him. For what? He asked. For protecting her when she couldn't protect herself. For understanding why this mattered. For not telling her she was overreacting. She wasn't overreacting, Marcus said simply. Her mother still thought she was, Paula pointed out. Her mother was wrong, Marcus stated. Paula turned around on the vanity stool. She told him her mother had sent a letter. Did he want to hear it? He said he did, if she wanted to share it. Paula pulled an envelope from the vanity drawer and read aloud. The letter was different from anything Hakiko had written before. It acknowledged that she hadn't just thrown away furniture. She'd thrown away history, connection, the proof that someone had chosen Paula every single day. and Hakiko had taken that away. She didn't expect forgiveness. She just wanted Paula to know that she finally saw it. Paula folded the letter carefully. It was the first real apology her mother had ever given her. Marcus asked what she was going to do. She didn't know yet, Paula admitted, but she was going to keep this vanity. She was going to count the 7 cardinals every morning. She was going to tell Emma and Sophie about their great-great-grandfather who carved love into wood. And maybe, someday, she'd be ready to let her mother try again. And if she wasn't, Marcus asked. Then she wasn't, Paula said. And that was okay too. Marcus crossed the room and kissed the top of her head. In the mirror, 7 cardinals looked back at them. 7 dreams carved in mahogany by a man who'd never met his great-great-granddaughters but had loved them anyway through the wood he shaped with his hands. 7 birds for 7 children Miriam never had but hoped for anyway. Paula realized something profound in that moment. The furniture had never really been about the wood. It was about the hands that carved it. The woman who used it. The love that lived in every flower and every bird. She'd lost the desk, lost the letters, lost half of her tangible connection to the past, but she still had the story, and nobody, not her mother, not time, not distance, could donate that. What we learn from this story is that good intentions never justify crossing boundaries, that irreplaceable doesn't mean expensive, it means irreplaceable, and that protecting what matters to the people you love isn't overreacting. It's exactly what love looks like. So what do you think? Was Marcus right to change the locks, or did they overreact? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button. We share real stories about family, boundaries, and the moments that change everything. Thanks for being here. See you in the next one.